These aren't scenes from big-budget action movies. They're real explosions.
Let's talk Konosuba. Originally airing in spring 2016, I had absolutely no expectations going into it, especially after seeing the isekai tag. If you're at all familiar with the modern isekai landscape, it's not a super original opinion to say that most isekai are trash. So when I saw that Konosuba source material was from a light novel, and that it was being produced by Studio Dean, my expectations weren't exactly very high. But to my amusement, I found myself largely enjoying the show, mostly thanks to its goofball cast that helped it break away from the masses of other generic isekai and create an identity all of its own by playing with common tropes and trappings of its genre for comedic effect that most other isekai heavily relied on. All good things must come to an end though eventually, and after the conclusion of Season 2 in March 2017, things were pretty quiet for some time. Though it didn't turn out to be the Season 3 that many fans had been praying for, their prayers were still kind of answered on June 25th, 2018 when an anime film was confirmed. The movie adaptation would set out to become a direct sequel to Season 2. Both Season 1 and Season 2 each adapted 2 volumes of the light novel. And the new movie would end up squishing the entire 5th book into its hour-and-a-half runtime. So while it wouldn't necessarily have the breathing room of its predecessors, the trade-off would allow it to be a fairly fast-paced story, even if it did kind of have to cut some things along the way for the sake of time. Studio Dean, however, would not be returning for this project, and instead, the animation would end up being handled by JC Staff, whom had gained some considerable bad publicity at the time among fans with their rush job on One Punch Man Season 2, though in honesty, that's a story for another day. Some staff members from the original TV series, though, would return, such as director Takaomi Kanasaki, as well as music composer Masato Koda and writer Makoto Uezu, so even though production companies had switched, it would still end up feeling like the same Konosuba that everyone had become attached to. I won't be discussing anything major, but from this point on, there will be minor spoilers for the Konosuba movie, so if you're a purist and you want to go in blind, well, this is your warning. It was a popular sentiment I heard before I saw the movie, and ultimately I really had to agree with it, that this film is just one long episode of Konosuba, and for me, that was exactly what I wanted. The humor was extremely consistent, and though the story was a bit predictable at times and isn't anything mind-blowing, I don't think anyone holds Konosuba in high regard for its thrilling narrative. It's all about the strong directing and writing, along with its amazing cast that's defined it, and I was so happy to see all of that come back. The plot of the movie does do its job though at constructing situations for the cast to react to, and they have plenty of opportunities to bounce off of each other, creating many memorable moments, such as the simple yet highly effective scene that opens the film, which had me and my entire theater dying of laughter. It was just perfect. Speaking of the cast, the main focus of the movie is Megumin and Kazuma, so Aqua and Darkness fans might come out feeling slightly underwhelmed in that department. As with the show, I find the backbone of the movie to be Kazuma, though to be fair, Megumin also does play a substantial role here. And though I never disliked her, she was never one of my favorite characters in the show. But to be honest, I did really like her in this movie. With Kazuma though, I find his warped and self-aware subversion of the generic isekai protagonist to be the most enjoying element of Konosuba, and this translates seamlessly into the movie. And while the villain could be seen as fairly generic in most ways, their personality and interaction with Kazuma was enough to keep me engaged. Some of the jokes weren't as strong as others, but they were all still funny, and it never gets boring. And besides some middle parts, everything is paced fairly quickly. I never felt like it was wasting my time. The final fight is a pretty by-the-numbers cliché anime brawl, but it's still absolutely satisfying and a great final climax filled with a mix of action and comedy that's been come to be expected. I've heard some rumblings of people complaining about the animation on the internet, and I legit couldn't understand why. Overall, the animation was solid, and the final clash was animated and choreographed very well. Sure, it might have not been a Studio Ufotable movie, but for a movie based on a comedy gag anime, the animation was smooth and fluid, and I had absolutely no problems. The character art was on point as well, expressions were dynamic and hilarious as expected, and I never noticed any characters off-model, besides when done for obvious comedic effect. And the voice acting? Oh man, the voice acting, it was top tier. It was even better than the original TV series. Everyone was really good, but Megumin and Kazuma definitely stole the show. Thanks to a friend of mine, I was lucky enough to see it in theaters, and the sound design was phenomenal there. You could feel the explosions in your bones, and it was just the icing on the cake to an amazing experience. If you ever have the opportunity to see this movie in theaters or in surround sound, you definitely owe it to yourself. Megumin's explosions have never sounded better. Overall, I walked away from this movie extremely satisfied. Megumin's character development was a very nice plot point, and getting to learn about her village and family was cool. And her little sister, while not having the most screen time, did get one of the best moments in the final climax though, and it was just as much surprising as it was hysterical. From the first scene that opens the movie, there was hardly a moment the audience wasn't roaring with laughter at the insanity happening on screen, and even through all the insanity in this movie, it had some genuinely nice and charming moments, and it ends on a nice heartfelt scene that is a perfect send-off to the movie and Megumin's character arc. At the end of the day, the movie delivers exactly what it sets out to, and while I'm not in the business of overhyping things because I believe it can fundamentally ruin an experience, if you liked Konosuba, this movie's a must-watch. So, that brings us to the question, is the Konosuba movie worth your time? I say, absolutely. And if you're still not convinced enough to give it a shot, or if you've seen it already and think I'm praising it too much, it literally has a JoJo's character in it, as Megumin's dad is a Joestar.
Oh shit!
No, wrong one. Also, can we just take a second to appreciate that the person that does this
お姉ちゃんね、超平和バスターズなの。みんなの平和を守りに行くんだよ。
also does this. Oh man. I really wanted to have this video out earlier, before the movie ended its limited theatrical run here in the US, but I don't own a computer or microphone, and this is literally the first time I've ever edited a video or recorded my voice for one in my life. All I had was my phone and a free app, as you can tell by this super discreet watermark. I don't expect to achieve any views or likes out of this thing, but if there is actually someone out there who sat through this jumbled mess of thoughts enough to make it to this point, then seriously, I can't thank you enough for giving me your time. So, apologies for the probably less than stellar editing and audio you just had to deal with. I really appreciate it.